What up, what up, what up, what up, what up? Today we are reacting to What If Hank Never Found Walter White's book. So without further ado, let's get into this.
And being that this is a Fed crime, the DEA would have no need to get involved. And considering Hank's history with Jesse, plus him not being on to Walter, he'd want to stay as far from the situation as possible. Because it really has nothing to do with him. And in the original, when he did go to talk to Jesse, he was kind of going rogue.
Facts.
Hey everybody, and thank you for watching another video. My name is Merge, and welcome to the Breaking Bad What If series that I call the Heisenverse. A series where I make a change somewhere in the Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul timeline, and see how that one change ripples throughout the entire universe. And in this video, we're going to make a change for the better. Because one could make the argument that Walter's life really started to fall apart when Hank found his book. Then, well, Jesse turned on him, Jack got involved, and the next thing we know, Hank and Steve Gomez are dead, and Walter's whole family hates him. It was a literal speed run to ruin his life, and Walter did it in about 2 weeks just for having a book behind the toilet. But what if things happened differently? What if that book wasn't just out in the open? Or what if Hank had to pee at the moment? How would that change the events of the series? Well, that's what we're here to find out today. And before we get started, if you could leave a like on this video to support the channel, I'd appreciate it. And also comment down below who's your favorite character in the Breaking Bad universe. For me, if we're talking main characters, it's definitely Gus. But supporting characters, I gotta go with Skinny Pete.
Yeah,
but with all that out of the way, let's get into it. After receiving confirmation that Mike's 9 guys in prison are no longer in the picture, Walter and Todd now have the green light to cook without having to worry about the DEA or the hazard pay. And within the span of 3 months, they'd make so much money that Walter wouldn't even be able to keep track of it. And just for good measure, he'd continue to visit Hank at his job just to see if he's still looking into the Gus Fring case. And to his delight, almost every visit, Hank vents about not being able to catch Heisenberg. And that does give Walter an additional peace of mind, just knowing that he's not on anyone's radar. But when he comes home, Skyler, who's been laundering his money, finally speaks to him after weeks of silence. And she would bring him to a storage unit where he can see the fruits of his labor, which is an enormous pile of cash the size of a Volkswagen. And as they both look at the pile, she would ask one question that he's long forgotten the answer to. How much is enough?
How much?
Bro, they said that was 70 million, bro.
How big?
It's crazy.
This pile
I don't even look. I don't know.
So after sleeping on it for a couple days, once him and Todd finish cooking up a batch, Walter calls a meeting with Lydia to talk about the business. And while she talks about the money and her plans on expanding beyond the Czech Republic, Walter with his straight face tells her, "That is not what I called this meeting for." And she responds saying, "Well, if you're not talking about figures, then what else could we be talking about?" She says with a smile, but it quickly fades when she notices that Walter's being serious, and he would tell her, "When this meeting of ours is over, and I walk out the doors of this cafe, I leave the business and how it operates to you and Todd. And going forward, I'm out. Do you understand?" And Lydia, with a confused look on her face, would slowly nod her head in agreement. But before she can say another word, Walter continues saying, "And this part may go without saying, but I never want to see you or Todd again. If you have any questions, you can figure it out on your own. That's the part I need you to be crystal clear on." And the confused look on Lydia's face now turns fearful, and she's not even able to look Walter in the eyes. But she answers him saying, I understand, and you'll never see or hear from me or either of us again. I swear." And he simply says, "Good." And after a few moments of Walter sizing her up, he puts back on his hat and sunglasses and tells her, "Goodbye, Lydia," before leaving the cafe.
Shit, ad break. Hold on, ad break.
Christmas was nearing with top gifts galore.
Later that same day, when Walter gets home, the sound of running water can be heard from the kitchen. And as he walks further inside, he sees Skyler washing dishes while purposely ignoring him. But when he goes to wrap his arms around her waist, he'd lean into her ear and say, "I'm out." And those are the words that she was hoping to hear for the past 3 months. And as she turns to face him, she nearly breaks down with tears of joy. And that same night, they go to get their kids back. And maybe after a day or two, they would choose to celebrate by having a family get-together with Hank and Marie. And while everyone's out enjoying the day, Hank would excuse himself to use the restroom. And even though he felt his stomach growl, it turned out that he just had to pee. And within a span of maybe 2 minutes, he's back enjoying the festivities with his family. And he would never know that he was literal inches away from figuring out who Heisenberg really was. And funny enough, that same night, Walter would feel the sensation to have to throw up, and when he does, he'd find a Walt Whitman book behind his toilet and decides to burn it the next day, figuring that he no longer needs to keep trophies or any facet of his old life. And as for Hank, when he does get back into the office, him and Steve Gomez gets back to locking up the bad guys. And ever since Walter retired, his blue meth has become so scarce that due to the popularity of it, most meth is now dyed with blue food coloring to mimic the blue sky. So even though the color is accurate, the quality is very noticeable. Not that I would know or anything.
You didn't happen to maybe try our product, did you?
So even though there's still meth on the streets, because that's never going to change, it does give Hank some sort of closure knowing that whoever Heisenberg was, he's no longer in the picture. And he can finally let go of this obsession that he's had for the past 2 years and now focus on being the ASAC of the DEA and truly retire from being a field agent. And on the other side of town, Todd and Lydia meet up at their usual spot, and she tells him that his meth is not up to par and the business has been suffering ever since Walter retired. But when Todd suggests reaching out to Walter for help, she immediately declines, not wanting to know what he would do if she does reach out. Because after all, this is the same guy who killed Mike and Gus, two people that she likely thought were untouchable. And with her being in a position where she doesn't exactly need this operation, her and Todd would go their separate ways, and she leaves him in the gang with the tank of methylamine. So although heartbroken that Lydia no longer wants to do business with him, Todd would still do his best to cook what he can, but unfortunately, he'd never be able to replicate what Walter had, and the purest he could get is roughly 77%, which is still good enough to sell in the streets, and with a little blue food coloring, Jack and his gang would still bring in thousands of dollars of profit. But for Todd, that wouldn't be good enough until he can make what Lydia wants, and he'll keep trying no matter how long it takes. Over with Jesse, he's still depressed and not really himself after what happened to Drew Sharp. And although Walter gave him the $5 million that he was owed, knowing that it's blood money, Jesse would want to give it away. And the first thing that he would do is go to Saul and have half of it go to Kaylee Ehrmantraut. And before he can question this decision, Jesse would say in a dour tone, "Save the bullshit, Saul. Even though you or Mr. White won't ever admit it, I know he killed Mike. And his granddaughter's gonna need someone looking after her." And Saul and Jesse would share a look of acknowledgement and basically doing everything but confirming his suspicion. And after that awkward moment goes by, Saul would question him about the other bag of money, saying, "Okay, so Mike's granddaughter, and what about that other bag?" And Jesse points to it and tells him, "You know that kid that went missing out in the desert a couple months ago? Drew Sharp?" Yeah, I seen him on the news. What about him?" Saul replies, and Jesse would look at Saul with a pained expression while shaking his head. And Saul would quickly say, "You know what? I don't know and I don't want to know, but are you sure about this?" And Jesse, growing frustrated, would say before leaving the office, Just get the money to Kaylee and Drew Sharp's parents." He'd say, slamming the door of Saul's office and leaving him to call Walter to fill him in on Jesse's plan. And in about 2 hours, Walter once again is at Jesse's doorstep with $5 million. And after having a heart-to-heart conversation about why Jesse wanted to give the money away, Walter would do his absolute best to deny killing Mike, and he tries to get Jesse to move past this. And although he seems to understand where Walter's coming from, after he leaves, the word blood money echoes in his mind for hours, and something inside of him would just snap. And he goes for a drive while having the money in his passenger seat. And as he goes through random neighborhoods at 3 o'clock in the morning, he begins throwing the ill-gotten blood money out the window, a couple $1,000s at a time. But when he ends up crashing into a playground, he'd be arrested not only for the reckless driving, but also the millions of dollars that he's just throwing away. And being that this is a Fed crime, the DEA would have no need to get involved. And considering Hank's history with Jesse, plus him not being on to Walter, he'd want to stay as far from the situation as possible. Because it really has nothing to do with him. And in the original, when he did go to talk to Jesse, he was kind of going rogue. And that was something that even he mentioned when he was talking to Walter out in the desert.
I don't think he's told him, bro.
So after Saul came to bail him out, the two of them will be joined by Walter out in the desert, and their conversation wouldn't be the same in this version, mainly because Walter's freedom isn't on the line. So when he suggests that Jesse leave town and just start over, it comes off a lot more genuine.
When it comes to building the best, it's gotta be Stock Comfort Plus. It's soft.
And with nothing really keeping him here, he'd agree that leaving town would be the best thing for him. And feeling partially to blame for the Drew Sharp incident as well as Jesse's mental health, Walter would give him an additional $5 million to live comfortably in his new life. So after riding with Walter to pack his bags, before they go to meet up with the disappearer, the two would shake hands and go their own way. And he'd start making changes immediately, even choosing to leave his house to Skinny Pete and Badger, leaving the drugs, cigarettes, basically everything but a bag of clothes and his money. And within the next 3 hours, Jesse Pinkman would officially be no more. And similar to Hank, he'd never find out the truth about Walter and what he did to Brock, and having another secret for Heisenberg to take to the grave. And as for Walter, he's enjoying being a car wash owner and a retired drug dealer. And with his newfound freedom, he spends as much time as he can being both a husband and father. And even though his cancers come back, a couple days out the week, he would do his treatment. And now, with a new lease on life and the goal of making money for his family already been achieved, his next goal is to see his son graduate and his little girl grow up. And with Hank not looking into him, Jesse leaving town, and Mike and his guys are dead, he gets reacquainted with the feeling of no longer having threats on his freedom or his life. And while sitting in the backyard looking at his pool, he can finally enjoy the fruits of his labor, knowing that everything that he did was for his family. And for all the wrong that he's done in the past 2 years, he can say that it was all worth it. And if he had to, he would do it all again.
Nah, but it's tripping.
Hey everybody, and thank you so much for watching this video, and I really hope you enjoyed another story from the Heisenverse. And this one might be, if not my most positive and happy ending what if that I've made in a while. But realistically, we're letting not one, but 2 drug-dealing murderers walk free on the streets with no accountability. As well as Jesse leaving town and never knowing what Walter did to Brock. But I guess in this version, it might be for the best. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, Todd might be able to crack Walter's formula and start working with Lydia again, but that's just me. But now I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of this story? Did you like it? Is there anything that you changed? And did it go the way that you expected it would go? Whatever it is, let me know down below in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. And don't forget to like the video if you like the video, and don't forget to subscribe to support the channel. Until then, my name is Merge.
Same shit to me. Anyways, we out. Peace.